Hello everyone and welcome to the demo for the upgrade path for the GitLab Cloud Native 3.0 major release of the charts. So my intent here to demo is to show the expected upgrade path for people to follow when upgrading the GitLab Helm chart from to the 2.x release series to the 3.0. So 3.0 was a release we did today, which includes several major changes to the chart, hence the major version update. They're listed here on our release notes for 3.0, but the kind of the summary of the changes can be broken down into two themes. One is upgrades to our dependencies, our dependent charts, in order to support the API, the Kubernetes API removals for old deprecated APIs that came with Kubernetes 1.16. So we had to update several of our components in order to be compatible with installation on that version of Kubernetes, as well as we wanted and needed to upgrade the bundled Postgres database, not only to a new version of the chart that we depend on when using the bundled one, but also to a new version of Postgres. So we're moving off of the Postgres 9.6 release into a Postgres 10 database during this major update. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So what I have installed is, I've already installed GitLab Helm chart 2.4, which is running GitLab 12.4. So up until today, up until the latest release, this release is a few releases old, but it would have been the oldest release that would have still been supported by security patches. So it would have been, up until today, this would have been the oldest sort of release that would have still been acceptable to install, to have installed. So I'm going to show the upgrade path from this version up to version 3 through following our docs. Before running the upgrade, I've already run a backup. Of course, that's recommended before any upgrade of GitLab, to always run your own backup. But other than that, we can see I've just got, this is the instance here, just a single project in it, just so we can confirm the upgrade worked and the smoke tested when it's complete. And we can see the instance up in K9s here with everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. In an ideal world, you would always be checking our release notes prior to doing an upgrade, but nobody ever does that. So I'm not going to perfectly follow an ideal path. I will follow an expected path that is acceptable for upgrade. So if I was just to upgrade this instance, kind of the recommended way we typically do that people might be used to, and so they would be probably the first thing they would try, would be to get the values from the previous instance, save those out, and then upgrade the instance. Maybe to the latest one by not specify a version. Maybe they would check Helm search first and pick the version. Let's say we did that, but we didn't look too specifically, so we grabbed version 3. Doesn't matter. So this is an expected upgrade for someone to attempt at this point in time. But when jumping major versions, I, as someone who already knows what's going to happen here, don't expect this upgrade to go through. I expect this to fail, and we'll have to look at the error, but the error is going to tell us that some additional steps need to be taken, and to look at the docs. So we can see we have an upgrade check pod that's been failing. And if we look at the logs, we can see there are some manual steps which need to be performed in order to upgrade the database. Please see the upgrade documentation for instructions on how to proceed and a link to our upgrade documentation. So this is, unfortunately, this is the error you get from Helm at this point. So you have to actually go in and look at the logs to find our more clear message. But that's what you end up getting. And during this time, the instance is still up. Nothing really has happened other than those check pods running. If we do a Helm list, you'll see the GitLab instance is still considered deployed, and it's still on the same version it was before. So in this ideal scenario, or in this scenario that we want people to follow, they would now be jumping in, checking our upgrade guide, which we had listed to. We have some very specific 3.0 release notes, and we have this warning that if you're upgrading from a 2.x version of the chart to the latest 3.0, you need to first upgrade to this 2.6x patch release in order for the upgrade to work. And our release notes describe the supported upgrade path. So we are going to go ahead and follow that instruction and upgrade to the 2.6 release. So first we're gonna find the latest patch.
I think you want a -L there. Yeah, there we go.
So of GitLab, our latest patch was 2.6.6. So that's the version I'm going to install. So we're running a new upgrade check. That check completed, and we'll go ahead and continue with the upgrade, and then I'll just wait for that to complete, and then we'll continue our upgrade to 3.0. Does anyone have any questions or comments they want to throw out at this point? Well, we have a few minutes.
A question about the error message you got when your first attempt failed.
Mm-hmm.
Could we add a little bit more guidance in there to say something like, please check the logs and a tip on how to do that?
So you're talking about the error message I got right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we haven't found a way to do that at this point with the Helm tool. So it's when we failed this upgrade, it doesn't let us control at this point the message that's shown, and so it just prints out whatever message came from the failed job, and the job spec in Kubernetes also doesn't show what the pods under it, like the reason why they failed or any of the termination output or stuff like that. So at the moment, this is what we've been limited to by Helm.
I think what maybe what Larissa's interested in is that tip that you already had the log up, but if I was a user, in the doc somewhere, and I'm actually looking right now, do we mention like, hey, you should set up a logging, someplace to go look at logs when you kick this off? Is that what you're asking, Larissa?
Well, no, it was more what DJ responded to, but
Gotcha.
that's an interesting point too, is do we have enough guidance in the docs if an upgrade attempt fails? Do we have guidance on how to check the logs?
So I'm not sure if we do here in the upgrade guide. We do, so in the major release upgrade guides, we do. So you'll see one of the early things we have is basically a description of this error, and a little bit of instructions of what you can expect to see if you go and you check the logs. But we don't have guidance in the upgrade guide about necessarily watching the upgrade for these.
I think maybe that's where if we could just even link to that other thing. Like I'm picture someone that's maybe never done this or hasn't done it in a while. It'd be nice to have it all at least referenced in one page.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then that dependence we have on the error message that Helm returns, is that something that's worth investigating more to see if we can customize the messaging, or have we exhausted our efforts on that?
So we've basically at this point there's an open issue with Helm to enable that.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I'm just waiting on the final rollout of the pods to come up here, and then we'll move on to the ultimate upgrade to the 3.0 release. So just waiting on this one final pod to come up. And now it's up and it's just terminating the previous old pod, but we should now be up at this point. The application is responsive. And if we take a look, we've upgraded to the 2.6 release version of the chart, which corresponds to the 12.6 release line of GitLab. So let's go ahead and start doing our 3.0 upgrade. So our 3.0 release notes talk about upgrading from 2.6.x, and they describe the manual steps required in order to upgrade some of the components, and refers back to our upgrade steps for the 3.0 release. So there's a couple notes here. A reminder that at this point you'd also want to take a backup in the interest of time, and do that I have the previous backup. I won't go ahead and do that this time. There's also some notes specific to whether we're using the bundled database or not. So in this case, in this demo, we are. Some of these steps are only required if you are using a bundled database, and can be skipped if you're using an external database, and those steps are marked with a note like this. So we're going to go through and essentially follow the steps as outlined here in this section by running the prepare script to prepare the database for upgrade, preparing cluster database secrets, deleting some existing services, upgrading GitLab, and restoring the database for the upgrade. So I'm simply just going to follow the instructions as described. And this is going to take a database only backup. It's now stored the backup in our object storage, and we can jump into the next step. So this involves updating the database secrets to a new syntax. So we're going to take the edit route. There's also a route where you can allow it to regenerate a brand new secret by deleting the old one and before running the upgrade. I'm going to go and instead edit the existing secret to add the new required steps. So the instructions here instruct me to change the key of the existing data here a little bit. And then they also want me to add a new key with a new password information for the super user, which I lost the one I was creating. obviously use a better password than that. But that'll do for this example. So we've edited the password. Now the next step is to delete existing services. This is related to an ingress field change that we've introduced in this release in order to make this release compatible with the new Helm 3. So this is a one-time change, but we do have a cautionary note here regarding this change, that if you that deleting your services, if you haven't explicitly given an external IP, is going to if you're using a dynamic IP, it is going to change the IP that these services end up being on, and that might require you to change, or very likely will require you to change your DNS settings. So we've called that out. In this case, I'm using external DNS as a chart, and so it'll take care of updating my DNS settings. Next step is to follow the standard upgrade procedure with one addition, which is to set the migrations enabled to false. This is because, and you only need to do this setting the migrations to false if you're using the bundled Postgres, because we'll run the migrations as part of the next restore the database step. So I'll jump up to the standard procedure. So meant just a link to the top of this file here, which is basically what I was showing how I upgraded before. Saving out the values of the existing installation. And upgrading. And we want to set the GitLab migrations enabled to false for this one upgrade. So we can see the upgrade check ran again. And we should see it start to upgrade to our latest release. There it goes. We have an upgrade warning that just points you back to the upgrade documentation. We still have one more step left, and that's restoring the database. So we're gonna start by waiting for this upgrade to be complete enough to run the restore. So we use this task runner pod to restore the database and run the commands. So we're going to wait for it to be rolled out to its new version before we start the restore. The task runner is now successfully rolled out. So we will jump on to the next step, which is to run this postscript. It describes here what it's doing, but it's going to scale down some of the services. So there's definitely downtime going on with this upgrade. It's going to scale down the front end. Then it's going to restore the database up at the same time upgrading it to Postgres 10, or the database has already been updated, but it'll import the data into this Postgres 10 database. And then run the migrations and scale the application back up, which will be the completion of this upgrade. So we jump into Caneyes, we'll see it has shut down Sidekick and Unicorn. Now it's restoring the database. So the back of the database has been restored. Now it's going to run the migrations to update the tables to the latest 12.7 GitLab migrations. And finally, it's scaled back up the application. So once these pods are back online and fully running, the application will be back up and we'll have completed our upgrade. So that's a look at the upgrade path to this new major version through kind of the more ideal scenario, or what we're expecting people to run through. Later this week, I'll be running a similar demo, but I'm going to be purposely skipping some of these steps to see, to show what happens when steps are skipped and how you can debug the situation you get into at that point. Does anyone have any comments, questions they want to throw out there while we wait for the last minute or two for this to finish booting up, and then we'll end the call?
How long has it been since the last major release?
So it was end of May 2019 was the last major release. That was the last major release of GitLab, the 12.0 release, and we did not have any major breaking changes in the chart at that time. So the last time we had major breaking changes in the chart was actually the 1.0 release of the chart, which was around August or September 2018.
Gotcha.
You know, it occurs to me that when we have these break and changes, I wonder if we should throw a specific variable in there that you have to set on the command line to allow the upgrade to happen. If you don't throw it, it really throws a lot of warnings out saying breaking changes, must read the documentation and pointers to the documentation.
Yeah, that would be nice. The problem we've run into is having it able to know that you're upgrading from a pre 3.0 release. So Helm doesn't give us a lot of information on where you're coming from, and so we've had to build in these pre-check hooks that stores that information and checks it so that we can determine that you're coming. Otherwise, it would throw that information on every release.
I'm even, well, yeah, I can see where that's, because we don't really only want to do that on the very first release of the, and if someone skips a couple and then comes in on a patch level or a minor release, then it's not happening. Yeah, okay, it gets convoluted there. It really does. Darn it.
Yeah, it'd be. I think that Helm issue on being able to output an error message would
Yep,
go a long way.
yep, definitely.
The way the hook, the check is implemented is like a very nice way to make sure that we don't, that the user, like they get a terrible error message, but their instance is fine. Everything's good. Nothing bad has happened. They just get a not great error message, which isn't ideal. But if we just had control over that error message, I think it would be quite a good experience. That's really the worst part of that piece right there. So just to finish up, we can see that my project is still here. The application is up. And we're running now the latest release of GitLab. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.